Before we hand over the session to Siddharth, a very quick introduction about our speaker of the day. Siddharth is a passionate, impact driven product leader with an 11-year track record in building, launching, and scaling digital B2C products. Siddharth, an alumnus from IIM Calcutta, is currently the business head for Research Discovery Product Suite at Cactus Communications. He aims to transform the way researchers, scientists, and academics across disciplines and designations discover research content on a daily basis. With his product called R Discovery, which now has a footprint across 190 plus countries. Previously, Siddharth was VP Product at 99 Acres and Product Manager at Reliance Jio, where he has led product teams and launched products impacting lives of millions of Indian consumers across various domains. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for being over here. We welcome you. And without delaying it further, handing it over to you for the wonderful session that we have in store.
Thank you, Kaustav. Thank you for this opportunity and welcome everyone. Good morning. I think very interesting topic and very excited to be having a chat with everyone in the product fraternity who is very curious about this topic, product market fit. This is something very close to my heart. I mean, and something which I've been practicing for many years now. I mean, different products, different industries, as Kaustav said, and it always intrigues. So I hope that during this session, about 2 hours or so, we'll be able to deep dive into, a lot of examples. I'll try and share a lot of my understanding in this subject, and we will zero down into some of the core concepts, which would be recommendations from my end if you go deeper down or try and include those in as a part of your current way of working, should help accelerate the journey towards product market fit. So I'll share screens and try and give you a brief flavor around the topic that we wanted to discuss today. Let me know if everyone is able to see. Yes. So as Kaustav said, basically some of the the areas he's already defined, but I like to define my overall 11 years of experience as being a product person. So what I've done typically is I've tried to solve problems. I've been, and by problem solving I mean Indian problems, global problems, but my sphere of working has been around digital consumer products. I've tried to be a value creator, both for the user, for the business. And that's what as a product person drives you, right? You want to solve real consumer problems. You want to do it in a way that you are generating a lot of value as a business, right? So, yeah. And then I've been an enabler for my team, for people who have worked with me. And I'm trying to be an enabler for the community by, having this discussion, trying to, discuss what I have been practicing, some of the learnings in this sphere. So yeah, I'm a computer science engineer, and I'm Cal batch of 2011. These are some of the brands that I work with. I started my career with Reliance Jio as a product manager, built a product called Jio Cloud, which essentially you can call it like a competitor to a Dropbox, Google Drive kind of a product, but sits very well in the overall digital offering from Reliance Jio. I started working on this and a lot of other consumer offerings.
Siddharth, sorry to interrupt. I think we are still seeing the first slide.
Can you see me moving the slides?
Not really. And also, I don't think it is in slideshow mode. So I don't know if it is only me or if it is for everyone.
Let me try and share again.
Sure.
Can you see slide number 2 and see slide?
Yes. Perfect.
So Yes. So essentially what I was talking about was learnings from, some of the products that I worked with. There is GeoCloud, which very early days when we started to conceptualize was just a part of the major offerings from Reliance Jio. But essentially, it sits so well in the ecosystem that it became a very great product, standalone product with more than 10 billion file uploads and all of that. But essentially, the learnings about creating a product in the consumer space and building a ecosystem were very great learnings. A very interesting part, 0 to 1, as we call it, right, in this industry. That how do you start to take a product from the beginning and try to scale it up. And then I joined 99 Acres at InfoEdge. I was handling one of the product segments called New Homes. Essentially, that's where I got my first twist around a revenue generating product, trying to look at a kind of a marketplace. Basically, on one side were builders, channel partners, right, who were advertising with 99 Acres, and then other side was a consumer experience, anyone who was trying to find a new home. I also did very interesting project around personalization, recommendations, and be happy to share some learning sometime on this. And currently I'm associated with Cactus. There's a brand called researcher.live. Cactus is a technology company which is accelerating scientific advancement. It operates in a very niche domain, which is around researchers, scientists, academia. And currently, I'm business head for a product suite, research discovery. Essentially, it's a set of technology which enables researchers find their top papers to read every day, which is very impactful, very interesting part from this technology, and it's a very important problem to solve for anyone who is in this space. So there is a B2B and a B2C part here, and the same technology we build solutions for pharma, for publishers. But my core focus, as was mentioned, is to reimagine this whole space, how people, scientists, academics, they find their top literature to read every day. These are a few things which define me. I've covered a few of them. I've been very keen enthusiast in building products around AI, machine learning. I've built search recommendations kind of products, mobile apps, been doing for 11 years. And largely, product strategy, UX, and I mentioned problem solving. Product market fit has been a very interesting element in all this. I mentioned Reliance Jio, right? We were just starting up at that time, trying to conceptualize products, try to learn more about the market, build MVPs at that time. Whereas in the last 2-3 years at Cactus, when I started with researcher.live, trying to build an ecosystem of products for researchers, it was that true experience of leading a startup. And even when I'm looking at research discovery suite now, the main challenge is to get our discovery to establish that product market fit. So the last 2 years on this subject have been very intriguing, very much full of learning and concepts and all of that. I'll try and build a lot of those in this, and I'm hopeful that in this session I'll be able to help you guys out understand many nuances about this topic, give you real world examples, and be able to then leave you with some concepts, some things to implement. At any point during this discussion, feel free to add your questions on chat. We'll try and give 5 minutes to the discussion, to the Q&A in the middle, but later on there is a dedicated time for Q&A. I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you add in. So I'll jump right in. As I mentioned, this topic essentially has a lot of details. It may come across as a singular subject, but if you go into details of it, it's like a full journey, right? And there are many elements to this journey. There are many elements to the culture, the team, the product experience, and many things which come in. So I'll try and unwrap a lot of those things, give you that that clarity around what is product market fit, what does it actually symbolize, rather than just be looking at it as a term. Measuring product market fit is a very interesting topic in itself. Not many companies know how to do it. Not many companies are able to do it from the word go. But unless you measure it, you don't know where you are in this journey. I'll then come to those real world examples, and then we come to those key concepts, which if you can implement, I believe would be a very important part in accelerating your journey. So what is product market fit? Let's try and look at some of the details. And this is very simple word definition which I've tried to coin. Product market fit is a stage in product journey when there is evidence to believe that product is getting love from many users and they can't imagine their life without it, right? So essentially, if you look at the words in green, you need an evidence to believe that a product is getting love, right? And that's why measuring, consumer feedback, what they're saying about your product, what it means to them is very, very important. And it's a stage. It's not, product market fit is not like it happens once. It's like a milestone and then everything changes, right? It's like it's a journey, and you will feel when your product is gaining that traction from users, you getting a lot of signals from the market that your product is now adding value to many lives, right? But the big word here is it has to be a journey wherein people start to link this product that of yours to their life so much that they say that, hey, if this was taken away from us, we'll be very, very disappointed, right? And this fits in one of the ways of measuring product market fit. I'll get to that later. But essentially, it's about finding that early set of users which like your product, which are early adopters, which give you feedback and help you build this product together. So when you see a semblance of product market fit, you expect things to change, right? And things change in many ways. If you scale your product, do more, then the market starts responding as well. There is enough pull from the market that you would see your product making a difference on its own as well. So you can expect more from the market. You can expect more love, more affection, more actions from your users. And essentially, it's time that you can, go further into your growth journey. So, and product market fit from a product perspective is not like you've achieved it once and then you're sorted for life, right? It is something that you have to evolve. You'll have to keep at it. Changing times, the change needs of the markets change, and hence your product has to also evolve. So PMF continues to, be a part of your product journey, but unless you start to see that first semblance, then, if you put in money, it's gonna go down the drain, right? So it's the time when you can think about growth. It's the first piece of semblance that yes, what you have built means something to many people, right? There are many industry definitions. I took these 5 from Product Board. You can just have a look. Basically, product market fit is identifying a compelling value hypothesis, right? So there is a value hypothesis in terms of what the product means, what you have built. Is it generating value to somebody? And there is also growth hypothesis in this phase that you test out whether people are willing to if it's a paid product, whether some of them are willing to pay for it. What do they say? What do they want more from you? So it's just that phase where you build that value hypothesis together with users, right? It's when you build something that people want, as I mentioned, right? You find takers for your product. You really don't have to push. You find that people come in, people start to just notice your product, adopt it, and give some feedback, tell others about it. And that there was a problem that you tried to solve, and now it's kind of gotten into a right solution as well. So in general, product market fit is not like a blanket thing. It has very, very unique phases. So you test out first your product promise, then you go into finding the right solution. You try and find the right solution fit. So essentially, it's when you have the right solution to a problem that was worth solving. And if you go deeper into those words, if the problem wasn't worth solving, you will not find users in the market. If you not build the right solution, then the problem was there to solve, but people don't like your solution. So essentially, both things have to come together. And essentially, the fourth part is very, very interesting, right? It's like when people love your product, what do? They start telling others. You look at any product that you use in current life, which you like so much. WhatsApp, you look at Facebook, you look at Slack in your professional lives, you look at Dropbox, you look at Google, any product that you have liked, you started using, and you like it so much, then you start to tell others, and that's when a product really starts to grow organically, right? And massive pull from the market. The fifth line is something which underlines that you've demonstrated that there is demand, there is you're producing this product, or it's available in the market and it's just taking off. So the supply from your side is less than actually what the demand is. Whatever you produce is just taken away, right? So that's a good thing. You then finding that pull from the market. So, but there's a very interesting analogy that I want to put in here. I compare a new product with a baby, an infant, right? All of this that we talked about in the definition of product market fit, it doesn't happen on day one. Like a small child, he doesn't go to school, dance class, sports academy, art class all on day one. Similarly, a product doesn't start acquiring users, showcasing virality, and becoming super engaging and monetizable all on day one. You'll have to be patient, right? Like you groom a child via food, via training, via experiments, and you keep patience, perseverance. Similarly, on the product side, it's about discoverability, it's about features, it's about experiments, and it again requires patience and perseverance. So it's a journey. It's not like you build something and it's there. You start seeing those traits. Kids start to, some kids start to talk first, some walk first, some start eating very different things the early stage. Similarly, with a product, some products will display good signs on adoption, some will have lower early adoption, but people you see who have adopted will engage more. Some products may not be monetizable from day one. You'll have to, try and build a full workflow around it. So a product has an evolution path. It doesn't show the same affinity towards all goals. Similarly, a child is not a finished article immediately, right? It's in due course of time. And even when children grow up, they're not equally good on dance, arts, and sports. Similarly, a product will never be like one product which is super on, monetization, engagement, adoption. All of that is very, very difficult, right? So products evolve in a certain trajectory and it has an evolution path, which means that we need to find the dimensions which suit the product the best. You will have to find what your product is doing well. You will have to track how it's doing on each of these axes. But most importantly, you'll have to ask and collect feedback so that you can work on it, right? Again, compare it to a small child. When the child starts going school, you try and talk to the teacher, you try and understand the feedback, and then you work on it, right? You try and teach your child those things which he or she is lacking, right? So you keep tracking, you keep asking for feedback, but you don't let it just flow. You develop that path. Similarly, with a product, you supplement it where it's falling short. You try and take feedback, you iterate, you keep doing the basic things. Like for a kid, the food, the education, everything continues, right, as a hygiene thing. Similarly, for a product, the basic, consumer insight workflows, your ability to iterate, trying to, build the best product, whatever technology you're using, refining it, the early stage, quickly pivoting, those happen, right? But you have to persist, you have to try hard wherever and whenever you feel like in the product market fit journey, you find a product, you will find aha moments. You will also find, it may be 1 or 2 days, it may be periods wherein you are just thinking that it's not happening, right? But you'll have to try harder. You'll have to get back to the users. You'll have to understand what they're saying, why they're not liking it. You'll have to, basically make it work. And if it continues to fail on one axis, you'll have to focus on another axis, right? Essentially, if you look at some products, right, as I was saying, they may not be monetizable on day one, but they may do super adoption, right? So you'll have to look at them as user acquisition part. But then, one axis, other axis, you'll have to balance things. But if it doesn't perform, then obviously you'll have to switch your focus to other products, right? So as a lot of this is very common with what we see in our personal lives, and that's how products operate as well. It's a journey, it's a push, it's a path. You'll have to, keep at it. Now, the 3 main ingredients in this journey, right, are product, the team, and the market, right? And essentially, let's try and look at what is the role that each of these play in this journey, right? So I have a very quick question for all of you. It's like, amongst these 3, what do you think is the most important in product market journey? So that's a poll question. Let's see, let's see how it goes. Feel free to put in this answer as per your understanding. What do you think is the most important? A lot of people answering team, some people saying about product, some people talking about market. Few more answers coming in. Let's keep answering. Anyone else wants to add in? Cool. So a lot of you spoke about team. 47% people spoke about team. 20% people said product, and 33% people said market. Right. So yeah. So I'll come back to the slide. Right, and essentially try and talk to you about which amongst these is the most important piece. So you can close the poll. Can you now look at my screen? Cool. So essentially, after the poll, let's look at the three ingredients. I got in most responses around a team, followed by market, and then a product. But if you look at Andy Radcliffe's law of startup success, and you try and equate this to product market fit journey, market always wins. That's the first principle. So the number one company killer is the lack of a market, right? And I would urge everyone here to, sometimes have a look at Mark Anderson's 2007 blog post. I think that one of the starting points around product market fit as a term, as a philosophy, as something that the companies, start to follow. And Andy Radcliffe's law says that if you have a great team, but it meets the lousy market wins. You have a great team, you're trying to build a great product, but there is no taker in the market. You're trying to solve a wrong problem, or you have a great team, but somehow you've not been able to come up with a great product because of whatever reasons. The product will not do anything, right? If you have a good enough team which can build a good enough MVP, but the problem is so big that people are willing to just adopt, just solve some problem out, right? Then market will still pull it. It'll start to give you something. If you have a great team which meets a great market, then obviously it's something special which happens, right? I'm not saying that you should not focus on a great team or not build a great product, but if you not have a good market, right? If you're in a poor market, you're not going to make it. So market matters the most. The team is the baseline component. You need a team to build something. You need to build a good enough product that people adopt. But if there are no people in the market to use your product, the product will not take off, and ultimately your great team will eventually lose, right? So essentially, neither a stellar team or a fantastic product will redeem a market. Of course, there have been instances in the market wherein, like a VMware, they built a very different kind of a product. So they've shaped the industry accordingly. Sometimes a great product can build a market, can do it, but those are lesser known instances compared to, the products wherein the market exists. Let's take an Uber as an example, right? There was demand in the market. People had a latent need, that people who needed to go to their offices, or they needed to travel somewhere in the city, they wanted cabs, right? They had an access to technology. They were friendly with technology. Something came in the market, a good product. It just helped, take off. So I think that's what is a very, very important piece. And then why is product market fit important? Again, it gets covered in the same post. Is that the only thing which matters to you in this journey of startup success, right, is getting to that product market fit. And I will let you read these lines together with me, right? It means being in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market. And you can always feel when a product market fit isn't happening, as well as you can feel product market fit when it's happening. When it's not happening, you know that people are not getting any value out of the product. You don't see people talking about it. The usage doesn't grow fast. The reviews are like not great. Deals don't close. But when it is happening, people buy your product as as fast as you can make it, or they start to grow the usage in super fast way, right? And the money keeps piling in, and you are hiring new people in the team. You're trying to scale your team. You're getting hot new things being talked about your product. I will take another couple of slides, and then I know there are 1 or 2 questions. I'll come to that. So give me just 1 or 2 minutes just to give you the full context around the market and the users, and then we take in 1 or 2 questions. So what does knowing and understanding the market means? It means that what are the current habits of people out there? What are the solutions which are out there? It means knowing what people are saying about each product. How are they responding? And how are these products responding to that market? What are the pain points, right? So in a market, there are 2 types of products, right? There are what you call as painkillers, and there are products which are like, you can call them as delighters kind of a thing, right? So are there pain points? Are there things which are not done well? You want to expedite, you'll have to think about all of that. Is it one big market, or there are some smaller markets within the same, which essentially boils down to the type of users, the personas and the needs? Do you see different behavior in these different cohorts? And then accordingly, you'll have to look at how to solve for them. Right? How do dynamics change? Any external factors which are pushing this, any regulations, any obstacles? Is the technology getting obsolete? What is happening because of external push? Is there growth? Is there stagnation? Is there disruption? How has the market been performing? Are there 1 or 2 main big products? Are there 1 or 2 products which are challengers, or is it status quo? None of them are making money. Is it stagnant? You see people coming in. So all of these things are important. These are 7 questions that you should try and answer for your market. And then about users, essentially there are 10 things which you should have answers to. Who is using your product? Basically, you need to know them inside out. This is a person called Alex. He or she is in this job, is the age group of this. Alex does A, B, C, D activities. The pain points Alex feels is around this particular part, and what is he currently using, not using, who is he talking to, what does he feel, all of those things. I think so there's a very good framework called empathy map. If you want to know your users and put your learnings together in one framework, then obviously empathy maps could be useful. You need to know where the product is used for. What is the product used for, where it's used for, when it's used for, and why it's used for, and how is it used for, right? So essentially the 5 W's and an H, the framework that you have around questioning, right, is very, very suited here. So you want to know a who, what, where, when, and how. But also equally, if you look at questions on the right hand side, you want to know who is giving up your new product, who is letting it go, and why. And also you want to know what do they do before and after using your product. So that, a very interesting part about product habit building is about not asking a user to change their habit, right? But then trying to know what user habits are, and can you plug your product in a upstream, downstream workflow that they currently, use. So can you become a part of the habit rather than changing their habit? If you do, likely more chances of you gaining success and gaining adoption than pushing people to change their habits. Habits don't change that easy. So I'll go back to Andy Ratcliffe's part, which says when you first start out, the only thing that matters is finding a cohort of users who truly value what you offer. Growth alone means nothing. If you go for growth before product market fit, before trying to answer these questions, before trying to validate whether your people like your product or not, then you're putting your money down the drain, most likely, right? So yeah, and the last part which I wanted to talk to you about in this phase of this presentation is measuring product market fit, and then we'll move into examples and concepts. But yeah, let me take one or two questions here. So yeah, I think if there are one or two questions, Kaustav, you can let me know. Or if people want to ask a live question,
Yeah,
you
so
can,
I think I have asked the candidates to put the questions in the Q&A. So as of now, I don't see any questions over here. But if anybody wants to raise a hand, then I can unmute themselves. I can unmute them and you can ask a question directly.
yeah, somebody had their hand raised, couple of people. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can see Rachita. Okay. Rachita, go ahead, please. You can unmute yourself and talk.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Ruchita.
So I wanted to know, suppose if you have a competitor for a product that you have developed, you are in the stage of developing, and I mean, should you still develop it? Is it worth developing, investing the time and money to develop it?
So you're saying you already have a big competitor in the market. Does it make sense to still develop your product?
He's not a big competitor because he I mean, his services aren't that known in like Indian setting, but yeah, I've come to know about it, so I was wondering if I should still be continuing with the process.
Absolutely. So it's a good question. I think it's a question which all of you will face in your product journey. Most of the spaces you'll find competitors either directly in the same geography or outside. I'll try and articulate, my thoughts around it. So basically, having a competitor is not a deterrent. There have been enough cases in the market that even a second to market or a third product to market or a 10th product to market has been able to succeed. There are 2-3 ground rules in that. Essentially, first ground rule is your competitor solving the problem in the way that it should be, or are there any gaps that you identify in that solution, right? Is the competitor solving for that need fully, or it's solving partially and there are gaps, right? So if there are gaps, you try and focus on those gaps first rather than trying to do a copy paste kind of a product. So copy paste kind of a product will not work, whereas if you are able to identify those right gaps via your, and I'll come about that part of the journey, how do you identify what is product discovery and all of that, but you need to be very granular. You need to understand what is it that is existing as a gap. Even if that competitor is not existing in India and it's existing abroad, you launch in India, there is nothing stopping that competitor to come in India if they see market as a very viable opportunity, right? So you'll have to, what you typically in the sense, right, you'll have to build your own moat. You'll have to try and solve that particular small problem that people have, and you'll have to do it in a way that your product becomes defensible. If tomorrow somebody comes in, right, a challenger comes in, you are still guarded. And the golden rule there is, if a new product coming into the market is 10x better than an existing product, then you will find takers. But remember the 10x part. If your product is similar, if it is just 1.5x or 2x better, may not be. People, as I said, people have their preferences, people have their habits built. Changing those habits is a very, very problematic thing, right? It doesn't happen easily. But if something is 10x better, your chances for attracting people are increased. Then you'll have to look at your distribution channels. Products which have network effect set in, wherein one person will pull in the other person to use your product. Those kind of products are very much better in terms of gaining traction. So in a nutshell, having a competitor is not a problem, but copying your competitor and believing your product will also do what the other product is doing is not the right thing. Even replicating the journey of the same product in a different geography, right, may not obviously work. In some cases it might, because the market may be similar, the user needs may be similar, but not always. So I hope Rachita, you have gotten some part of the answer. I think in the subsequent slides we'll know about some of these things when we look at real examples as well.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Let's have another question. I think there's Nagendra who had the hand raised.
Yes, Nagendra, please go ahead. Raja Nagendra. Nagendra, you can unmute yourself and then speak. Yeah, I think Nagendra dropped off. We have Syed also.
Please, Sayed, you can unmute and ask.
Syed, go ahead, please.
Hi, I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
Just give me 1 second. And please bear with me with the background noise because I've got kids here.
No worries.
Okay. See, my question is simple and it's quite straightforward. See, I just want to clearly understand how different is a product manager certification from a project manager. Also, what's the scope of getting placed as a product manager in the current market trend? And lastly, I'm a bit skeptical about which one of these two, certification programs that I would want to opt for. I have actually decided myself to go for one of the certifications, like project manager firstly, but later on I happened to, unexpectedly, or I don't know how, happened to stumble upon this product manager thing. So if you can have this question answered, please.
So Sayed, I think I'll try and answer this question towards the end, because it's a very different thing. Project manager and product manager are very different, lines or roles. And certifications, I think Costa and Institute of Product Leadership should be able to answer that maybe offline. I think on the subject product market fit, if there is something specific I would like to answer now, but otherwise this is slightly tangential topic. I'll try and address this towards the end. What we are looking at today, the product market fit journey, is irrespective of the roles. We're talking more about what the whole team goes through. Largely it will be led by the product team, the product managers, and the founder himself in a lot of cases. But essentially the specific roles related things is slightly different than the agenda that we have today.
Oh, okay, no problem. I will be looking forward for my question to answer probably at the end of the session, Siddharth.
Let's take one more question and then we move on.
Okay, we have Raja again. Raja, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question? I think Raja Nagendra is facing some issues from his end. So we have a few questions in the Q&A box as well. I can see the name as S. I don't know who exactly that is, but I'll just read out the question for you, Siddharth. How to manage a product brought in for the employees in the organization and it does not live up to the expectations. Example, a CRM. I'll repeat that again.
Yeah.
How to manage a product brought in for the employees in the organization and it does not live up to the expectations. Example, a CRM.
It's a very specific question. I think it's more around product management than the journey. In a lot of cases, the product will be brought in a lot of cases, products will be integrated. In a lot of cases, the product will be built by the company. Managing the product like a CRM is a very different ball game. Sometimes you want to look at an understanding about how do you manage a product like this. Sometimes you may not have an experience, but when you start to understand the product, right? A CRM product typically means basically getting to build a kind of a customer profile and building that relationship with that customer, right? So the backend product may help you just get in things, insights, understandings about the users, You try and build a profile centrally, and then you use it. The CRM product typically requires people to build in those kinds of insights. It requires people who can read those and communicate those out to the different teams. So yeah, I think it's a very specialist kind of a product suite. It's used in very different ways in different companies. The basic thumb rule to managing a product like that is to first understand from your organization's perspective why a CRM kind of a product is required, and which are the teams which are going to use it. How is it going to solve a larger business problem? And then obviously, you require to get into the day-to-day operations part of how that product, that CRM, is going to, perform its role. So yeah, I think that's a very brief understanding, but I'll come back to the context now, which is measuring product market fit, right? Let's try and look at some of the most common approaches, right? We have time for another poll quickly. And I would like to know from the people here, right? You'll have heard about this term, product market fit. You would also have heard about some of these things. How do you measure your product standing on product market fit? Are there any techniques like this which you have used? Or, what is the current sense? Are you aware about any of the? Let me try and understand which ones you are more familiar with. And then accordingly, I can loop in. Okay, NPS, weekly cohorts. Somebody understands, yes, the PMF survey, interesting. So I'm getting responses around all of these. Good, that there's a lot of awareness about these type of topics. We have a few respondents. Any others who wants to share their views? NPS seems to be the most popular amongst this group, but yeah, other tools have their own merits, and I'll try and talk about those as well. Any few last questions? Okay, so yeah, I think we have some responses. Let's go right deep into this. The most prominent answer from all of you was Net Promoter Score, NPS, and which is kind of expected, a very well-known term in the product space. And then you have also mentioned about product management fit survey, which is a very interesting piece. So let me go deep into all of this. I'll go into the first technique, which is around the 40% test. So the product management fit survey and the 40% test is also known as the Sean Ellis test. Essentially, this is a qualitative survey which tries to quantify your standing on product market fit in the context of your current product. What do you do in this test is that you ask your current users of the product, you ask them this question that, how would you feel if this product you could no longer use? If this was taken away from you, how would you feel? And you give them options like very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed, or if that person may say, I'm no longer using this product. If 40% people or more say very disappointed, then likely your product is around the verge of product market fit. It's on the winning side. It's doing well. The reason Sean came to 40% as a benchmark was because of studies of about 100 startups. 100 plus startups. When he studied, he was able to see that if in general 40 people are just very disappointed about your product going away, that means the product has made an impact. So this test has been used very, very significantly across the industry, and it gives you a very clear answer. It gives you answer directly from a user, right? It just hits the nail on the head. There's a company called Superhuman which did this test. You should read about their CEO's post around how they built an engine to find product market fit. They essentially asked these 4 questions: that how would you feel if you could no longer use Superhuman? Superhuman, by the way, is a product which is saying that, which wants to build the fastest email experience, right? They also ask people, what type of people do you think would benefit from Superhuman? What is the main benefit that you receive from Superhuman? And how can we improve Superhuman for you? So essentially asking your audience about how would they feel is the first part of the survey, first part of the journey, right? Then there are other things. How do you use this? So you then have to go back, look at each answer and try and profile this audience. You'll have to see people who you are targeting, who are your right personas, what have they responded? Sometimes when you send your survey to a lot of users, you may find answers from segments which you are not targeting. And they saying that we are not disappointed from your product is fine. You want to know from your actual segment how they like your product. Then you analyze this feedback. Very interesting thing is, if you look at the previous slide, wherein I mentioned the second option was somewhat disappointed. These are people who, who are on the fence sitters, right? These are people whom, if you tailor your experience, they will convert into your loyal users. And that's why the questions that you see around the third and fourth question on my right hand side, the main benefit and how we can improve, they come into the picture, and you develop a roadmap. And then you keep tracking this product market fit over time. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, it's not a one-time thing. You continuously need to keep a track. It doesn't mean that you do the survey every day, but you just do this survey and try and repeat this after 4 months, after 6 months, after 2 months, depending upon your product, right? It is essentially something which is very, very important from your product's perspective. That's where it's a very critical thing, right? In my own experience, we've tried doing this survey for a product called Our Discovery. I'll also talk to you about. And I had very, very similar observations. When you hear people saying about very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, when you ask these questions, you get this feedback. And when you see answers to the other questions, it helps you find the right pulse. And it really helped us get to know where the product is today, right? And also helped me and my team build in a product roadmap for the future. So this was very interesting. I'll come to the most popular topic that we had in this, which was Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score essentially is a very common thing. You will have seen this kind of a survey on many products. You are asked this question that how likely are you to recommend this product to, to others, to your friends, family, your colleagues, right? And you have a scale of 0 to 10. People who respond from 0 to 6, you call them detractors. 7 to 8 is passive, and 9 to 10 are people who are promoters, right? And essentially, the NPS score is percentage of users who are promoters minus percentage of users who are detractors. And your goal is to have more promoters than detractors, obviously, right? So it again tells you from people directly, right, that, how many people from your current respondents are willing to promote your product. If the number is in positive, you see more promoters than detractors, then you're likely, going to see a high level growth. You ignore passives in this scale in your computations. The third way of measuring product market fit is a ratio of CLV and CAC. CLV is customer lifetime value. It's like an average revenue or average value that you can expect from a customer during their entire lifespan of usage of your product. Customer acquisition cost is essentially the cost of getting a customer to purchase a product, right? When you look at a ratio of this, if CLV by CAC is 1, that means whatever you're spending to get a customer in is what the customer pays you back. And there is no room for profit then. If CLV is less than CAC, that means what the customer is giving you back is less than what you're paying to get that customer on board. Then obviously you have problems with this business model. Then you are not going to succeed. I mean, according to David Skok, who's one of the experts in this area, the ideal ratio is 3:1. But there have been products which have even gained 5:1 kind of a ratio, right? So it means 3:1 or above that, you mean you are, ahead of the curve. You're likely there in your product market fit journey, right? But having said that, you need to keep an eye on how much time to purchase. Time to purchase means how much time a new user takes in to make his first purchase. You need to know this, because then you know how much is your product exciting to a user, how much your workflow is streamlined so as to make the person make that purchase. You will obviously have to rely on word of mouth and reviews. So for a product which is a mobile app, typically your reviews on the Play Store, your ratings on the Play Store is a great indicator. Your customer retention rate, which is like week 1, week 4 metrics, your D7 retention, day 7, D30 retentions are very good numbers. What is the response to your marketing efforts is again very important. You'll have to look at unsubscribes, uninstalls, bounce or drops, right? What I want to emphasize here is more than science, right? It's more about discipline. Any metric that you use, any kind of a strategy that you use to measure product market fit, if you keep tracking and assessing, your progression will be faster. You choose one or more metrics, but you keep doing it. That's the biggest gain, biggest learning that I would want you to take in from here. There's very interesting another thing which I came across and I thought I'll bring in this discussion is product market fit canvas. It brings in the full picture together on how we talked about the users, the market, the alternatives, the competitors, all of those things are brought in together. It's something like this. So there is customer segment and there is product or service, right? So customer on the left, product on the right. From a customer side, you want to understand the characteristics and what the person wants to be done. On the right hand side, you know what alternatives currently the consumer uses, what tools they use, how do they get their job done. On the left hand side, again, you look at problems and needs. And on the right hand side, you want to understand what are the key offerings, key features, which is making that happen. Then there is channel on the left hand side. How do people acquire your product or service? And on the right hand side, you know what is the value that the channel will get by offering or selling your product. And don't think about channel as like you think about a distribution company, pharma distribution company or an FMCG, or channel could be your users themselves. So for products wherein people refer other people to use your product, the channel is the user, the distributor is the user, right? But what is the value he is getting, right? So essentially the channel will promote your product only when there is value for the channel. So you'll have to think about that, right? And what is the user experience that the customer has, right? What does he do with the product to get value? And then on the right hand side, you need to know what are the metrics by which you're measuring this experience, right? And these are the metrics which will help you understand the product market fit. So try and build this together for the products that you use. Try and build this together for the products you are currently operating on. And then you'll try and get a larger understanding around this. Now we get into a very interesting part, product market fit journey of some of the products. And I'll try and share as many examples as I can from my experience and also some of the products which are very well known. First, I'll go to the product which I'm handling currently. It's called R Discovery. It's a mobile app, Android, iOS. The product is used today in almost every country in the world, 190 plus countries. So, and weekly basis, we get people from 60, 70 plus countries on an average, right? So it's a product wherein we started off with first initial set of users, but in the last 10 on months, right, it's just taken off in terms of the acquisitions. So we found people from very different countries just coming in, using the product, giving us good ratings, good reviews. They give us a lot of feedback. The product has very, very good rating, around 4.6 plus on Android and iOS. Many countries we find ourselves rated 4.8, 4.9. So yeah, I mean, my experience around building this product, like we were trying to put together an MVP, in 2020, 21. So basically 2 financial years from now, I mean, we launched this product in Q1 of 2020. And, we were trying to build together an MVP, but we resisted the urge of going big on marketing. We thought, let's try and build the product, get a few early adopters in, try and get their feedback, try and see how they're using the product. The product, by the way, serves a very niche audience. It serves researchers, scientists, academics all over the globe. Every researcher in the world, howsoever senior, junior, whatever type of research he's doing. He may be a researcher on COVID. He may be a researcher around climate change. He may be a researcher around vaccines. He may be a researcher around any physics area or a humanities area or religion or whatever, right? Every researcher, every part of the globe wants to know about the recent research happening in his field. And he wants to know about it on a daily basis. He wants to be aware, because if he's not aware, he's putting his time, his energy, his life into researching on something which may not be required, which may have already been built by somebody, right? So it's something, so the product solves a very important need. It tries to give researchers their most important, relevant and recent papers every day. And it tries to solve their pain point that they lose a lot of time in finding those papers rather than, spending time on reading. So the time spent on searching is almost half of the total time spent. That means you only get 50% of the time reading. And even the time that you get to read, half of the papers or more than that, you find irrelevant, right? So there is a lot of time which is wasted. But is there a product that can solve it? Like me and you, as consumers, we read. Why can't a researcher just get few papers to read on his phone every day? So that's what the premise was. That's why we tried to build it. It was a strong need. It was a need from many geographies. It came in from a lot of insights that we had as a company. And it fit in very strongly into the business model, into what we were trying to do, which was building a ecosystem of products and services called Researcher Life, right? My learning and my team's learning in this was, in the early stage, while we looked at all numbers, we looked at our active users, we looked at the ratios like DAUs by MAUs, we looked at, retention cohorts, we looked at many things. But the thing which helped us get to know how our people are using it, why they are liking it, why they're not liking the product, was analyzing each consumer profile. So when we were small, we looked at many consumers who had uninstalled the app, or many consumers who were using our product for many days, and we found what they were doing. We were trying to analyze every single thing in their profile, every single action, and then we were trying to find, oh, for this consumer, hey, this is a problem. We found this small problem, big problem. What happens is, when you find these smaller problems about each consumer, smaller, one or two consumers, likely these problems are being faced by many people. So it helps you fix that. So what I want to emphasize here is, while it's good to track numbers, but averages can be misleading. Every user matters, and the insights that you get by analyzing consumer profiles is sometimes much more valuable than, looking at just averages. So if you do strong marketing, your active users will increase, but the point is not increasing numbers in the initial phase of product market fit. The point is to know the gaps, the positives, the negatives around how your consumers are using it. The other thing in the last 1 year, which I've practiced very strongly and my team has done well, is reaching out to users. So how do you develop channels of interaction? So a lot of you will say that, oh, hey, people do not respond to our emails. A lot of you will say people don't respond to our phone calls. Obviously, you will find rejection rates there, but that doesn't mean that you will stop doing that. The bottom line there is, you have to develop your channels of interaction with your users. You have to develop not one, but multiple channels. You'll have to talk to people via interviews. You'll have to develop, automated emails. You'll have to write to your users yourself, very dedicated, personalized emails. And if you write to 20 consumers daily, even as a founder or a product manager or whosoever you are, believe me, it will give you much better results than, trying to build that next feature that you're building. So how do you try and build a channel of talking to the consumers daily? How do you develop those? You'll have to use Play Store reviews as a channel. You'll have to, give users an option to give feedback to you within the app. You'll have to look at social media and how people are talking about your product. You'll have to, mail. You'll have to WhatsApp. Basically, do whatever it takes to, get to your users. Keep discovering, keep iterating. So as long as you are discovering newer things about your product, your consumers every day, and as long as you are able to iterate basis that, your journey towards product market fit will always be good. So you increase your chances of getting to product market fit multifold. And I think this was one of the biggest drivers in our surge of acquisitions that we have over the last few months on our discovery. that, we developed those channels. All of us in the team tried to, reach out to users, respond to them, try and build connects with them, and basically adopted this philosophy of reaching out to users where they are, and the fact that every user matters, right? So this was my learning. There are many interesting things around product market fit journey from a lot of products that we know. Dropbox, if you know their co-founder Drew Houston, he did two interesting, very interesting things. He adopted this concept of a beta waitlist, basically without coding anything, right? Without even building the product, he put in a 4-minute explainer video on a news aggregator site, and basis that video, he was able to get from 5,000 to 75,000, responses. So what he was doing here was trying to put out the pitch of his product without actually, introducing his product. But that was able to, just give him that much kind of an insights. So the insight here is that you first have to find a product promise fit, and I'll talk about it later as a concept. But essentially, you don't need to code and put your product out there to be able to know whether your product has some promise or not. You can do that with quite simple things, and in case of Dropbox, they did it with a video. Another interesting tactic which has been used by Dropbox is being a viral referral campaign. When you refer other users, get them to sign in on Dropbox, you get extra storage space. So you do that as a user to gain storage space, and in this case, users become your channels to distribute, right? So if a product has network effects built in like that, and again, I'll talk about this concept a lot later, this can be extremely successful. Now, Slack, which I think all of you would have used or would use in your daily life, it won the customer part of the equation. Slack has a very strong feedback loop from the daily start, right? What it did was win a customer, and if the customer is happy, he will get others in the team to use the product. But another interesting evolution around Slack, I don't know if you know, is that Slack did not start out with this vision that we'll build a communications platform for teams. It was developed as an internal tool while the founders were building a role-playing video game. But the team realized that the market had plenty of role-playing games, but there was no product like a Slack. So they pivoted to Slack as a very different kind of a product. The idea here is, one, you'll have to build those strong feedback loops to get insights from your users. If you can test the product on real users and you have access to those real users, it can give you much value. Like Slack tested their product out to their user base. Rather than a user base, they tested the product out with their team because they were a set of developers, right? The set of developers, how they liked Slack was very insightful before Slack even went out to the market. And then this whole pivot story is like brilliant. You basically you're not wedded to your idea. You should not be afraid to pivot if you feel that there is a better opportunity out there. So Slack gives you that example. Spotify found an opportunity in a very gray area, right? So Napster and a few, Napster as a product was declining. So the music industry was facing very strong competition from the P2P platforms, which is like peer-to-peer file sharing platforms. So you don't typically see these platforms in a positive light because of the whole copyright infringement and all of that. But the founders were thinking about this piece that, hey, a lot of people are listening to music illegally. Would a small percentage of those people, would a decent percentage of the people be willing to pay a very small fee for legal consumption of music? And they essentially built a product which, reimagined this whole space about listening to music. It became a product which, all of us like as a daily thing to listen to music. But before that, it was about looking at an opportunity, right? So in your product market fit journey, and this relates to the question that was asked to me, right, in the session, even if there is a competition, if there are existing habits, you need to look at smaller opportunities. Right. So even looking at a gray area, but solving it for it differently, right? You can reimagine the whole piece. Netflix, there is a very strong learning from their journey. I know all of you would know Netflix, right? They had a DVD based business when, in the early 2000s. They started to compete on the DVD. They had a DVD by email operation. If they had continued to be that, they would have faded out when DVD players faded, right? But Netflix, what they've done is they've always positioned themselves as the easier, cheaper alternative to your current entertainment habit, whether it's a rental business, whether it's a DVDs business or a traditional television. Netflix has altered its product every time the market has changed. So that's the point which I was emphasizing on in the start, that the product market fit is not like a one-time thing. You look at your product from the context of the market, you alter your product with how the market is changing, and you stay flexible. You keep an eye on the future. That's how you progress in your product market fit journey. And that's how Netflix has done it. Google, again, everyone has used Google, but Google worked exactly like any other search engine for the early part of their presence, right? Until AdSense happened. So AdSense is more their ads network, right? It's the ad network that they made, but they made it based on the understanding, the insight that people will be willing to display their ads beyond the search page. So if they kept on, being just a search engine and showing the ads on the search page, they wouldn't have grown like they had. Imagine if you, want to put in an ad for a travel luggage or a American Tourister or a Samsonite, basically a trolley which you carry to your tourist locations, right? When you travel, would you not be keen to put in that ad on, let's say, a travel website like a Make My Trip or a TripAdvisor or in place? So basically, they try to emphasize this whole network of pages and found out what would be relevant, ad repositories or places to show ads for a lot of these businesses, and AdSense made them just kick off. So basically, you have to find things which your competitors are not doing today and try and adopt to meet those needs. And then there are a lot of other examples. Spanx by Sarah Blakely. So Sarah Blakely tried to re-emphasize this whole industry around women's shapewear. Basically, the manufacturing was done and the conceptualizing was being done by people who were not the users. They didn't understand the problems that women were facing because of those wears, right? But what she did was she tested the products out herself and in her family, and basically testing it with real users, gaining feedback and optimizing gave her a flip, right? And the business was just taking off. Zumper is another example in trying to make renting an apartment as simple as renting as simple as booking a hotel, but they do early and continuous validation with their users. Fivetran is more in the B2B space, but their journey around product market fit gives you insights around they just focused on that one thing which their user told them to focus on. And before that, they were just all over the place. They were thinking about whether the market is making sense for them or not, but they followed what their user said. They just narrowed it down to one thing and then just took off. Sai is another product which helps launch startups. But when they were looking at a very different kind of a industry, a different kind of an audience for one of their products, they partnered to gain insights. And then there are around other examples from Green Key and Kin Insurance, like, basically, that your biggest competitor today, even if there is no main competitive product out there in the space you want to go to, there is status quo. People are, doing things today as well, right? If you want to, for example, few years back, if somebody wanted to launch, a news app, there were no news apps out there in the industry, right? But doesn't mean that there is no competitor. People were reading news on newspapers. They still do, right? So the biggest competitor is status quo. And obviously the other thing is ideas are never equal to business. You don't keep wedded to your ideas. You have to move away from your ideas if the business is telling you something else, if the market is telling you something else. So that's about, how I would like to look at, these examples. Yeah. And essentially now what we can do is we can look at some of these concepts in more detail. And this is essentially going to tell you about how do you accelerate journey towards product market fit by adopting these concepts. And I'm going to talk about some of these in much more depth before we then head into a kind of a Q&A session, right? So the first thing that you will have to look at as an individual, as a team, whatever, right, is mindset. Gone are the days wherein the old mindset that you have to find a problem, build a solution for it and market it, and that's it. You may not be able to optimize your product market fit journey if you operate like that. There are many ways on which you can operate better, and if you adopt the different mindset, you can get more speed. The new mindset talks about basically finding a problem. Then, as I explained to you in the Dropbox example, it's better to describe your solution in words and in design. What it means is, if you want to put out a video, if you want to do basic ads, and today you can do like very small ads on Facebook, on any channel or wherever, right? All you need is a place wherein you can describe your solution in words. You can make people land on a landing page and then ask them to do some action, right? So essentially, a few words, a design, a very quick hacky kind of a landing page and a click to action can tell you about your product promise. So essentially, you are marketing your product promise and not your product. Right now, you are trying to find a promise that will hit big with enough people. You're not trying to first invest in building a product and then essentially marketing it. This is faster. This tells you if you need to pivot, if the problem you are trying to solve is actually a real problem, if it finds takers. So that's the whole big thing that you need to double down on. And then you build the MVP, keep measuring, keep building, keep iterating, and then you look at growth. So it's a three-part problem. It's a three-part process rather. It's the first part is finding your product promise fit. The second part is then, iterating, evolving your MVP. And then the third part is after your product market fit, your third part is build and market, right? It's very well captured in an NFX article, which says about new mindset around product market fit. Go ahead, read about it. As I mentioned in the trilogy, wherein we talk about product, team, and market, you need to first give importance to the market. And some of you may think that, hey, if you're marketing your product promise, you're telling people about an offering, whereas the offering doesn't exist. Is it even ethical? Some people may still feel that, there's something wrong. There's nothing in there. People just duped me and they got me to, come to a landing page and respond. But majority of the people, what you're asking them to do is to sign up for a product which is coming in, right? People, if they really care about finding a solution to one of their problems, they would not mind this, right? It's just about getting to know a new thing and saying, yes, if this thing comes in, I'll be super happy. So it's something which all of the good startups should be doing today. They are, and this is something that you need to look at with a very open mind, that how do you test out your product promise? And I mean, whenever I say a phrase called test, typically people associate testing with regular testing, which happens after development. But this is testing before you build anything. And as I mentioned, all you need is a smart positioning. All you need is showcasing your pitch, your on a given channel, and get feedback. If you do it well, you will have a wait list of users before you even start coding. And what can be better than that, right? You don't even have a product, but you have takers for that product, right? And essentially, rather than using code, use language, use English as your building block. You tell a product story the way you would tell the story of the product when you start marketing it. So you're testing out your story, you're testing out your USP, and trying to, look at whether you have a problem worth solving. This is the first part of the PMF journey that you are solving. How do you measure this? You measure it by the CTRs of those ads and the conversion of your landing page. There could be other things, but this is just a very high level, suggestions. Now, I read this interesting line somewhere, and I thought I'll just give you this flavor as well. Smartest startups, right? They believe on this philosophy of earning the right to build. You don't have a right to build just like that you want to build something and you will build. It's not like that, right? You have to earn that right to build. That, you prove a product promise, you get feedback, and then actually go into the process. There's a very interesting other thing, which is around this, right? Typically, you would have heard about marketing around, setting budget, setting, doing a full-fledged campaign, going big with the notion of a product, generating demand and all of that. But I wanted to talk about a term which a lot of companies have started using. So you've heard minimum viable product, MVP, but I want to talk about minimum viable marketing, which complements the MVP approach and can help you accelerate the journey of product market fit. So the idea is to, validate the proposition with smaller group of people. What I talked about, our discovery to you, the product which I'm leading, what we did was we did not, get an influx of users by marketing at first. We were looking at people who were organically noticing us. Some people we were trying to get in via other channels, but we were trying to keep it small so that with this small group of people, we get into more of co-designing or a co-creation kind of a phase. We take in feedback, we iterate on the product before we go big. So you look at getting people in short bursts, try and improve your product with their feedback, and then continuously measure and learn. So what do you do here is it's more common sense marketing, low budget. You try and just think about very smart ways of getting to people, building messaging and USP, trying to generate demand, creating some content which can compel people to come in. So it's about telling, selling, compelling, right? Tell, sell, compel, but get people to come in, experience, and then you get to know about them. So it's applicable to the pre-growth stage of the product, which is your product market fit phase, right? I will want to emphasize this concept of reaching out to users where they are. You need to create your own channels. The more the better. The channel could be product interviews. The channel could be a in-app feedback. The channel could be user feedback on your Play Store, App Store pages, and not just your pages, right? Your competitors' reviews and ratings coming in are also important, right? You can use social media. You can create one-to-one communication channels with your users on email. You can develop WhatsApp group of your most loyal users. You can get people to join you as advisors and as ambassadors of your product, close groups. So there can be a number of things which can be done, but the idea is you try and create more and more channels. You spend more of your time in looking at the feedback coming in. You will have to make efforts to get feedback. You can't sit and wait. It doesn't work, right? You can, and then sometimes people feel getting feedback is about just writing to a user. The user writes back to you, and that's it. I mean, product discovery is more than that. Continuous discovery or user interviews or continuous user interviewing is more than that. It's about fruitful conversations. You have to keep connects going with users. You'll have to respond to them. You'll have to help them use your product better. You'll have to go that extra mile. You'll have to make them your advisors, right? So it's not very easy. Sometimes people just say that, hey, it's not happening. But believe me, if you set up those channels, those processes for your team at the start, then it's always going to help you. There are many ways to hear consumer feedback, and it's not the job of only one person in the team. You don't need to have a separate team to do that, right? It's a job of every person in the team to be able to do this, right? It is continuous discovery. A digital product always evolves, and it's not linked to just one person to do discovery for others. So, and then a very important thing is co-designing. As I said, create channels, but create channels for what? right? So if you look at this article from inc.com, you'll see about, a lot of examples around this term around co-designing, right? So co-designing is about a partnership, formal or informal, between a company and its current or potential users. So basically, you get your customers, your users to contribute in the design and development of new products and to bring them in the market. Maya Health is a health platform, right? But they have physicians, nurses, hospital admin, patients who essentially are helping the team co-create, right, the product. DeWalt is again in this space a very well-known brand, right? They have an inside community of 10,000 plus users. So what this helps essentially is to take your product faster to the market, increase the chances of success. Basically, when we're talking about accelerating your journey towards product market fit, it can only happen if you involve your users as a partner from day one. It again goes back to my point, right, of creating those channels, getting that close group of people to come in via minimal viable marketing, adopting that mindset in the team, and then going forward. So that's why I remember, right, one of the points which I mentioned in the start or in the takeaways of this presentation was that, from a mindset perspective, if you win the battle, if you ingrain the right processes, the right culture in your team, it may help you beyond just skills. So a very skilled team, if it's not hearing their users, they may not come up with the right product. But even a good team, a decent team, but doing these things right, like co-designing, reaching out to people, they may come up with a product which is like brilliant, which may not be technically the most superior product, but it's built in a way which is solving the problem in the right way. And that is your product market fit, right? So that's how you'll have to think about it. Mindset in this space trumps everything else. That's what I would say, right? This is a very interesting piece again. I believe all of you would have heard about product roadmaps. I mean, that's something every product person gets to know about. And what is the most typical thing that you have heard about a roadmap? What you have seen in a roadmap? Overwhelming majority, product roadmaps are about a list of features, right? Right? It's about a set of features. It's about timelines. It's about effort estimates. It's about, it becomes more of a project plan rather than, a product roadmap eventually. So all of us in the startup space, in the product space, have been too much, blindfolded by this term product roadmap, that we just put together a list of features and we say, wow, I have a roadmap, right? It's a feature-led product roadmap. I would urge all of you to start looking at an outcomes-driven roadmap rather than a feature-driven product roadmap. What it means is that you will have to look at consequences, user-focused outcomes, right? You will have to look at what do you want to achieve for a user. That's called an outcome, rather than an amount of something produced by a person, machine, or industry, which is an output. I mean, if your people work 12 hours a day or 18 hours a day, keep reducing hours or some work, and if it is of no value to a user, right, your product is in shambles. The output of your team is not going to translate into value for the user or value from the business. You're never going to see product market fit. But if you achieve the right outcomes for a user by whatever means possible, right, you are more likely to see product market fit. Now, outcomes I've already told you, right? I'll give you more examples, but essentially, if you see the figure on the right-hand side, you would like to know what are the user outcomes you want to achieve now, in the near future, or later in the future. And then you will have to, translate those into your roadmap. I'll give an example, right? If you build a roadmap for a product like Netflix, right? Netflix in 2022 would be looking at tons of different experiments, tons of different things, but they would say that I want to achieve these 5 user outcomes, right? Let's say the first outcome is, as a user, I come to Netflix to watch them, to watch the shows, to watch the most relevant shows being watched in my country today, right? I want to see if there are users who are very, very focused on local kind of content, right? And Netflix is, let's say, targeting those. They would want to achieve this kind of an outcome that, a user will say that I want to come to the Netflix to explore what are the top watch shows in my area or within my circle, people, right? How do then Netflix measure that this is happening? They would want to measure this via, the user adoption of a workflow like, our top shows kind of a thing. So how many people in how much time span are able to, see what are the top watch shows in their space? And you would have things that you may want to do now in the near future or later future to be able to accomplish this, right? You may say that I want to come to Netflix because I like the user experience the best. Now, the user experience is driven by personalization. So you will want to know that when you say the user is coming to Netflix because he likes, the personalization aspect, you'll try to measure this by measuring the number of shows that the user, puts in his watch list in the first 3 sessions. Or you would measure this by, the time it takes a user to bookmark the first 3 shows or watch list, put 3 shows in his watch list, right? And then you would say that I will do it by doing these 3 things. And you are not building a feature-driven roadmap. You're saying, I'm doing this thing, I'm considering this thing, and I may consider this thing. It's not set in stone that this is your feature roadmap. Similarly, for our discovery, for example, how I operate, as I told you, right, this is a product which gives the researchers, right, all over the globe, it gives researchers the best papers to read every single day. So if the outcome I want to drive on our discovery is that I come to our discovery to find the top relevant recent papers for me, I will want to measure this on how my recommendations is performing, what are the click-through rates and other things around my recommendations, right? And I would like to consider, investing more on my algorithm or my, my user experience around those top papers or in the notifications. These are just examples, right, on how I will like to consider my roadmap. It is not driven by, a particular UI uptick or a particular feature. It's driven by what I'm considering, what is the output I'm driving, right? So, yeah. So I think that's how you need to operate. It's a very, very powerful tool, outcomes-driven roadmap. You can try building this for any product that you use so that it gives you clarity when you're trying to learn about it, when you're practicing it. Try and put this together for your product. Don't go into timelines immediately, but this has to tell you what are the end outcomes you are expecting for a user. Then there is another case which I talked to you briefly about, which was about network effects. And I told you about the Slack experience. If you have an existing product in a space, you have to build a new product which is 10x better than the current experience. Otherwise, it's not going to fly. But beyond a 10x better experience, if you have a product which has networking at the core part of the product experience, then you have a super strong moat. Basically, the 10x experience also will get copied in the future. It gives you a short-term competitive advantage. But if you have network effects, the product will not be easily copyable. Take WhatsApp as an example. Tomorrow, if there is a 10x better communications platform, a communications app, would you straight away migrate? No, because you have all your family groups, your friends groups, you have your official groups on WhatsApp. You will not want to migrate to a new platform just like that. So it gives WhatsApp that strong moat. It makes them, stronger. It makes them guarded against competition. So a product like that starts to pick up very fast, because if you convince a user that the product is good, that user will get people in its circle to use that product. And once some people come in, more come in, it kicks off. And that's what Slack did, right? Slack brought the activity of a workplace socializing online. Water cooler conversations are very common in any workplace, right? But Slack brought it, on an online platform. It made it much more smoother, much better. They had a very good user experience. They gave workspaces, channels, group direct messages, one-on-one conversations, a lot of things in the same experience, a seamless sign-up experience, and it kicked off. And I told you the story of Slack. It wasn't even intended to be, launched like that. It was being used as an internal communications tool, but it was seen as a very big value. So networking effects has a lot of things in it. And if you want to read a lot about it, read some books like Blitzscaling or some of those, resources which tell you about some of these product journeys, like a Slack, like a Dropbox, like an Airbnb. Just think about how they kicked off, Facebook and others. Facebook, when it took off, when it was in the phase of its product market fit, they were like sweeping campuses one after the other. I mean, in night by night, right? They started in one campus, but then when it started to grow, entire campus was on Facebook in a single night. So it's like growing like that, and that's how it operates. So again, I'll try and spend 2-3 minutes on this slide, and then we'll move into question answers. So we talked about product discovery as your best ally in the journey of product market fit. We talked about how you have to, continuously discover new things from your users, continuously reach out to them, reach out where they are, study each user, get insights on a daily basis. Everyone in the team has to do it. Keep doing it, make it your DNA, and then you see how your journey expedites. We talked about how flexibility, pivots, micros, and outcomes, right, are more powerful than roadmaps, stability, macros, and features. See, what happens here is when we are developing a product, right, or we are a founder of a startup or whatever, right, we typically see ourselves as builders, creators. So our focus goes too much into creating something. We lose the view of the market. We say, okay, I want to build it, right? That urge is so strong. You want to make a difference. You have a very strong thinking around this, that you just look at a macro picture, you look at some features, you build a roadmap and just try and go about it, right? And if you go back and read the journey of Superhuman also very strongly, right? They were in the phase of the product market fit thing. They were constantly thinking that, should we keep developing? Should we launch? If we launch, the product may not is not in the right shape as per us. It may not do justice to the effort that we put in. So it's that constant trouble, right? You sometimes get too much wedded to your ideas. You don't pivot. You don't go deeper into each consumer profile and find those gaps. You look at broad averages. You say, okay, my active users are looking good. Let me keep doing it. Acquisition numbers are looking great. Acquisition numbers are not a sign of your product market fit. Your retention and engagement are, right? So sometimes you lose sight of that, but the idea is to be flexible. The idea is to be able to be nimble-footed, pivot, be agile in true sense, and think about outcomes. If you're able to drive outcomes for your users, things will happen. If users adopt your products with that mindset that this product is doing something for me, then that's it. It's not about features. It's about making that outcome happen. And I mentioned to you, right? If you were to choose between skills and mindset in the first phase, obviously you need rock star, team members. You need super, good technical folks. You need people who can do wonders, who are like geniuses in coding and all of that. But you need to get everyone in your team aligned to a philosophy of, continuous discovery, continuous interviewing, and all of that. And you have to develop that mindset. Sometimes it happens top down. Sometimes it happens by examples. When you see the product leaders, when you see the business leaders, when you see the founders, analyzing a lot of feedback from Twitter, from social media channels, the Play Store, the user emails. When you see people writing to users writing back to them, they conversing, a lot of people in the team get motivated, right? So as product folks, we have that baton, that whole responsibility to guide, to take our team along. And obviously now it'll come to that question which was asked for me around the product manager and the project manager, right? So the project manager is somebody who is managing the project, right? He's managing a deliverability, or somebody who is keeping the team together around a timeline, around something which was to be built and shipped at a particular date. But a product guy is somebody who is setting that product philosophy in his team, who's setting in this culture. He's somebody who is an advocate of the user. He's bringing the user insights into the team. He's getting the team to build. And as I said in my introduction, right, a product person has to be a problem solver, an enabler, and a value creator. So how do you solve a real world problem? How do you identify a problem? How do you try and validate this, solve it, learn more and more about it? How do you create value for the users and for the business because of that? And how do you create, what do you say? How do you enable others in the team to adopt that? So there is that thing around product-led teams versus technology-led teams, or sales-led teams, or other kinds of teams. Product-led teams adopt the philosophy of user first, right? They adopt the philosophy of outcomes. They adopt the philosophy of making a difference to a user, getting the user a value, and then other things follow. So I think that's the role of a product guy, and there are ample courses and ample learning material and whatever things that you have around this. But if you have to take away the three things from this session, and if you found these useful, I'll be super glad. I think anything you want to reach out, my email ID is pretty straightforward, siddharth.vashne@outlook.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/svashne, right? So happy to connect with anyone in the product fraternity to discuss. If there are comments, questions, which can come in via Institute of Product Leadership, happy to answer those. So yeah, I think this is broadly it in terms of what I wanted to showcase, and happy to take any questions. So I'm seeing one feedback around our discovery. It seems interesting. Thank you so much. So I think for your feedback, do let me know again what you found interesting, what you found missing. You have my credentials. That's again, anyone in the product fraternity who has anything to say about the product or anything, just reach out to me. Cool. I think we'll open the floor for questions. We have ample time. First of any question or thought that you want me to get started with, we can do that, or we can ask people to raise hands and ask.
I think, Siddharth, there are a lot of questions already in the Q&A section. So I guess, when you are explaining about the competitor product part, wherein you were telling about, filling out the gaps, there was some follow-up question which we were not able to address at that point. So I think we can start with that. So Sunil Maurya says, you are talking about the gaps in competitive product. This I see is a difficult part. If we can find out the gap, then why cannot competitor find out? If competitor is filling those gaps, it means there is no value in filling those gaps.
It is difficult. So I think that's a very interesting point. Finding those gaps is the most critical thing, most difficult thing. And as I said, while it's difficult, the path to that is users, right? So one of the companies I remember is following it very closely. What they do is they watch their users solve those problems or their daily use cases around that problem themselves. So for example, very clear fundamental thing, right? When you follow your users, when you try and get insights from the users, you try and get the users to articulate their problems and not the solutions. It's up to you when they're articulating the problem and when you're seeing them do things that they do in their daily life, what do you make out of it? So if the competitors would solve for all problems or all gaps, newer products will never come in any space. But you see newer products coming in, things change, getting changed, and all of that, right? So many people here may be users of Orkut. The last, 15 years have not seen much of Orkut, but before that, people used to use a lot of Orkut, right? A lot of people were happy. But Facebook came in and started filling some gap, right? And they were able to find that out. Similarly, every space you see, Spotify, right, was an example I shared, right? They found a gap. People were finding music to listen to. People today also find music to listen to, but Spotify is doing something, right, which is not what others are doing. So you can only find out that gap if you are listening to the people in the market, and those people in the market may be users of your competition, but see how they're using their competition. You will find some gaps there. See how they're using their existing solutions, like an Uber, right? If you see the pre-Uber world, you as a professional, you're trying to go to office, you go out, wait at your gate, you will try and uh, stop a few taxis, you'll try and bargain the fare. Some of them will agree to go where you want it, some of them will ask for all of them will ask for cash payment. You just need to observe that behavior to be able to find 5 or 10 gaps there, right? And while an Uber filled in one of the gaps, right, which is the taxi thing, somebody else filled in the gap around online payments and all of that. So very, very interesting, techniques that people adopt. But obviously it's possible to find out those gaps, and that's how newer products are coming in every space. So I don't know if this answered the question. This was very high level, but the question was also slightly bigger, slightly ambiguous, right? So trying to just see what examples could make more sense.
Thank you for that. So we have also a few other questions as well, and while Siddharth, I'm pretty sure you will be addressing most of them. A quick note to all the participants. So I think if my screen is visible, you can see a QR code there, and it would be really great if you could scan the QR code. It's very small form that with a very few questions to give us your valuable feedback about the session, so that we can make it much more better according to your feedback. We will take each and every feedback very seriously, and we will try to make it a better experience from our end definitely in the future. So while we answer the rest of the questions, while Siddharth answers the rest of the questions, would be really great if you can take some time, all the participants, and provide us with some feedback. Okay, so I think I have a next question from Sandhya. What all factors to focus on while trying to get some product for fulfilling training needs of the employees, like an LMS? How to convince the management who does not believe in focusing much in this area from monetizable aspect?
So yeah, I think again a very specific question. I think the question talks about LMS and how do you get employees to get training. Uh, Essentially, there is no one way to do this. I think it's up to the people who believe in the product to be able to convince the management. It's about the need which the product is solving for the company, the value the product LMS is solving, either from a company's perspective or from a user's perspective. And then you try to build in a case. Basically, yes, training is a big part. And unless you get your employees to use the product, get trained on it, then you can't get people to adopt it. So it starts in house and you take it from there. But yeah, LMS is a very, very specific B2B scenario, which where many companies operate very differently on.
Thank you, Siddharth. Next question is from Jasprit Singh. How to create a monopolistic product, or how we can break the monopolistic market?
So the toughest part, obviously, and how you do this is, I mentioned, right? If you are putting together an offering, which is, sorry, if you are unveiling an offering which is 10x better than the existing offering, then your people will come and look at.
Siddharth, if you remember, so Syed.
Yeah, Kaustubh, sorry, your voice is slightly
Yeah,
breaking.
sorry. I think there was a lag from my end. Am I audible
No,
now?
so yeah, you're audible. So I was trying to answer the question around monopolistic market, right? And I'll give you an
Got it.
example.
Got
Uh,
it. Got it.
Monopolistic market, if you look at, right, TV industry in a way has been ruling the roast. Everyone had cable TV channels. Everyone was watching their favorite channels on TV. You had Tata Skies, you had Dish TV, you had Airtel, you had Videocon, a lot of big players, right? But I'm taking this example, while there are players in this industry was like, basically in entertainment space, TV was a monopoly. TV experience was a monopoly. But now you have had the Netflix and others who have taken on that baton by finding, by making them more relevant to the changing market. And the changing market was internet. They made use of internet. They put together a offering which is cheaper. They put together an offering which is more personalized, which is more beneficial, which allows people to, which gives people more liberty. A lot of people who want to binge watch. I mean, that whole user behavior that people will like to binge watch was unveiled somewhere, right? So by getting to those kinds of insights, this whole industry, which was dominated by TV player, TV and cable TV and all, has been turned upside down. If you look at, what else? You look at social media, right? It had been a monopoly, one big player at one time, right? But you see a new player coming in every few years. It is because with evolving needs, somebody has been able to build a product which is 10x better. Uh, who else? I think in various industries you would see those gaps, those things. Something like a search engine is a very tough thing to crack. Nobody has been able to build a 10x better product than a Google. So it's not happened yet. So I think it's about what is available in the market and how do you build something which is much better, and a challenger always comes in.
Thank you, Siddharth. Okay, I have one question from MJ Joshi. Just a minute.
So the benchmarking of retention rate, uninstall rate, this one, right?
Yes. Yes, correct.
Very interesting question. I think thanks for asking this. I think while I touched upon some of the what we say techniques, right, of measuring product market fit, but it's a very valid point. What should we consider good? What should we consider bad? Right, as a number. So I think there is no right or wrong answer here. What I'll try and share is from my understanding, right? So the product art discovery, as I told you, is very niche space. Not many mobile apps in this space which are solving this problem. And every product like this, right, is trying to unearth a very different type of a use case, a very different kind of an experience that has existed today. For example, we are saying that in this space, you don't need to go to search engines to be doing searches every day to find the articles to read. We are saying the top articles will automatically come to your phone. Right now, how do I measure the retention rates or the success rate in this space? There is no product which has the similar pitch or will have similar benchmarks. And even if the numbers exist, those numbers will be private, right? A competitor is not going to give me their numbers to benchmark. So I think where you start is, in general, you look at some of the industry benchmarks. Even if there is no similar product in your domain, you may want to look at that. Hey, for content apps, for example, in general, content or reading apps in general, what is the typical engagement or retention numbers look like? What are the week 1, week 4 numbers which the industry considers as good? So you may want to start off there. Then ultimately you try and create some benchmarks for your own product, right? So there will be some things which will never be bad to look at. For example, retention. That if you want to make a product which is a daily use product or which is a very frequent use product, you would know that week 1 retention numbers or week 5, week 4 retention numbers, if they are below a certain level, let's say week 1, if it's below a 40-50%, then it's not solving the goal. You've not been able to make a first good impression. So week 4, if it's lower than 20% odd, it's still not great. So I think these are things you will anyways taken from your secondary research, from industry or from wherever, right? As benchmarks. That for mobile app, let's say 60 to 70% of the mobile apps are installed after their first usage, right? They don't make it beyond the first day. So that's a number which is available. But does that hold true for each industry? Does that hold true for e-commerce, for marketplaces like I mentioned 99 acres, there's shadi.com, naukri.com, all of these kinds of marketplaces? Or will it hold the same for a reading platform like a Medium or a communication platform like a WhatsApp or a Slack? The numbers will be different, right? So you will have to look at some available numbers for your industry. The good numbers which are available publicly are, if you have an app, you always have ratings and reviews available for every product in that space, right? That's public. So it's a good number. Bounce rates and uninstalls, typically typical numbers, right? If your bounce rate of your site is higher than 60%, that's not a good number. If it's less than 60, but more than 40, that there is something wrong in between. If a web product has a bounce rate of less than 25%, then very good product. So some of these things will not change. They hold true for any kind of a product, so that you can use for initial benchmarking. But typically you will try to unearth some things which are very custom for your industry, for your product. And you may, for product market fit, it's absolutely right to focus on a metric which is very, very specific to your product. And as I mentioned, right, in the outcomes driven roadmap, some of these metrics can be very, very specific to even your workflows. Your personalization workflow can have a very specific metric. Your localization of your content can have a very different metric. You can have so Netflix, for example, their North Star metric is like the retention rate, the churn in retention, the number of people who are canceling the subscription, right? And they've iterated on it. So I mean, these metrics are very specific, as I said, and they keep on changing with time. You start with what is available in the market, and then you take it from there. I think one question, Costa, is super interesting.
We have a next question from my group.
Yes.
What are the indicators for a company that they need to pivot to new model or product? Maybe from a B2B or B2C company or product.
Yes. So I think we talked about Slack as an example. But when I gave that analogy about infant and a product, right? We said dimensions on which a particular product can be strong at, not strong at. You may essentially see, the product is doing well on some axis, some not, right? So I think the bigger part is, if your product market fit journey is taking long, if you're not hearing the right things about your product, then it's the right time to think about pivoting. You will make attempts, you will make n number of attempts. But if you have tried and basically if your engagement and retention numbers more than anything else are not great for beyond a few years, right? If the feedback that you're getting from your customers is telling you consistently that, basically you don't see that pull from the market, that the people are not just taking up this product, I think you'll get those subtle hints. There is again no one particular time frame wherein you will say yes or no, but it depends upon for a startup, right? For a startup, typically a lot of startups run out of cash before they reach to the product market fit stage. So you'll have to be wary of that. You'll have to see what your finances, your companies, investors have given you. Basis on that, how long you have to get to a product market fit, and you set in those smaller time frames. You look at that in the next 3 months, I want to get to this number. You tweak if that number is not being reached. I think it then goes back to your conversations with your users and basically the cues that you take from the market, right? So Google, for example, took the plug off from a lot of products like Google Plus. We know Orkut was sunset, Google Plus was sunset, right? Some of the products typically could not just reach a product market fit. There were Google Trips, there were others as well. So when you realize that after a given period of time, you don't see that pull from the market, it's not leading to network effects, it's not leading to a positive, as I said, right? The number, if you look at the scale of CLV by CAC, I said 3:1. If your CLV by CAC continues to be less than 1, your lifetime value of a customer is lower than what you're spending to get users, no point continuing with that product after a while. So these are leading indicators, and it also depends upon the current standing of the company, how your product is being used. If you have another business idea or a product that you're toying in with, right, that may be a good thing. And in some cases, it may be that you have found a product solution fit, but this is not a product that is going to scale in terms of monetization, right? You don't have a revenue model which is going to fly, and you feel that without that you may need to change. So you may want to change your business model and not your product in that case. So it's again what part of the puzzle that you want to solve. If you don't have a product promise fit, then you have nothing. If you have a product promise fit but the solution is not right, then you tweak your product, you look at a different way of building that product and try and find a product solution fit. If you have a product solution fit but you don't have a validation for your business model, keep the same product but tweak on your business model, try out new things to build that. So I think there are different ways in which you would get those cues and different ways in which you'd like to pivot. Yeah.
Siddhartha, I think this answer is in line with a different question that Suresh has asked. So, what is the order of the list to achieve success? Product promise fit, problem solution fit, product market fit. Would it be same for all solutions or would differ across for different industry and products?
It's a good question. I think it's linked to what I mentioned, right? Product market fit is the whole journey. And I would say the first part is more product promise fit, and the second part is more the product solution fit, right? So while the product promise fit is more about discovering and validating, the second part, while there is still measuring and validating, is about iterating on the product. While in the product promise fit, there is no product live, right? It's all your positioning that you're trying to pitch in. So largely the order remains the same. Product promise fit comes in first, then followed by your product solution fit, and then you go into a growth phase. These are 3 phases, and the first 2 together constitute the product market fit journey. And essentially what I would say that B2C, B2B, it's a similar journey. The same process can work. For a B2B, you would have to reach out to a few clients. The clients will, if the clients like your product promise fit, you'll find a greater, engagement. You may want to co-create your product with one particular client, and you may in that way get your first monetization, partner there as well, first client who is paying. B2C, I mean, it's essentially the same. I mean, so what I meant was in B2B, there may be a slightly bigger overlap, right? Because while you're finding your product promise fit, you are trying to build in together with one partner, right? But your solution may get into a lot of specific development with that partner. B2C, product promise fit, I think has to come in before, because otherwise what it will lead to is to just you may unearth some things later, which is just then leading to a waste of your time as a company, what you put in coding. So coding comes in later. I would say it's a smart thing to first try and use language and typical value proposition to be able to find out. If because of some reason, while you are in the product solution fit journey, you want to tweak your product promise, you have figured out something more interesting now with real data coming in from users. Because remember, product promise fit, you didn't have data on product usage. You had data around performance of the ads and performance on the landing page, the click-through rates and all of that. But now when you are in the phase of getting your initial users use your MVP in your product solution fit stage, if you find some data which is good enough to make you, tweak your earlier promise that you had validated, then you may have an overlap. Your product promise fit may, expand, and obviously then the product solution fit may tweak as well. So I think these are for some finer nuances, but I would say there is merit in, looking at this order for a new product.
Thank you, Siddharth. I think we have one last question. So this question is from Rachita Pant. I haven't started earning yet, and I don't have a technically strong team. I'm a part of a fellowship. I have been trying to build my startup through inputs of certain networks and outsourcing skills of individuals to develop the MVP. Can this format of working work till the time I get investments in half a year from now?
See, there is nothing right or wrong in that, right? It truly depends upon the founder, how he or she wants to, kickstart their journey. So, yeah, I mean, it's your journey. It's more dictated, or it's more derived from how you want to spend time today. But obviously, outsourcing skills or some of those things, right, doesn't make or break the MVP. You should be able to utilize the skills from the market, should be able to utilize insights which people who have done startups before they want to share with you. So you absolutely right to build your startup through inputs of people in your network and get people to work part-time, outsource things, and it depends upon what your vision for the product is. What do you want to build? If it is going well the way you want and you've been trying to do it, then it's fine. If you think there are gaps in the team or in the product or in the insights that you've gotten from users, then you may want to tweak things. So it's fully determined by how your current startup experience has been and what do you want to change and why, right? So I think you'll have to go into a sort of a self-interrogation mode, and figure out if there are things which are impacted because of the way you've been dealing with things, right? But it's not a ground rule that startups which are built with dedicated teams, people on ground, more hands on deck, they do better than startups which are working with very different ways, right? So I think I think this is how I would see this. All the best in how you've taken up this MVP in the startup.
Thank you, Siddharth. So I guess we are at the end of the Q&As because there are no further questions from any of the participants. So once again, thank you, Siddharth, for this wonderful session, for a lot of insights that were shared regarding product market fit. I'm pretty sure that all the people who are present over here are going back with a lot of knowledge that they maybe did not have or needed some guidance into. And also for this wonderful session and for your time and your contribution. As a very small token of appreciation, we would like to present you this certificate to you for this amazing masterclass. Thank you so much for your time, Siddharth. We will be definitely looking forward to having more such engagements with you and more such engagements with such candidates who can take out time on their weekend in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to get some more insights into the industry and develop product mindset among themselves. Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Kaustav. Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. It was wonderful just to share insights with all of you.
Have a great day ahead. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.